It's a joke. I kid with my brother right there. Tonight, I have the privilege of starting out the series that we're going to have this summer. So I don't know how we're doing this. I don't know if there was going to be songs ahead of time or whatnot. So we're just going to wing this and play it as we go along. And I'm just going to jump right in. But all the ministry staff and the shepherds are going to kind of tell their story. And I'm going to spend a little bit. I don't have a real big faith story, so I'm going to talk about it for just a little bit. And then I want to talk to you about this new work that I'm doing with the Army National Guard. And so tell a little bit about the Army chaplaincy. But I am a fourth-generation minister. Great-grandfather, grandfather, and my dad and I are all ministers. My dad did not become a minister until I was probably a junior in high school. He was in community. When he got out of the Army. That was before I was born. He worked in information system technology and worked for St. Thomas Hospital, owned his own computer business for a while and things like that. But really kind of felt the family call, I guess, to be a minister, and he's doing that now and is doing well. Thank y'all for praying for him. I got to see him last week, and he's doing really well. He got a good, clean bill of health. He's just really fatigued right now, and I'm going to get to see him this weekend as well. We're going to do a Mother's Day thing on Friday night. So I grew up in the church, literally. 9 months before I was born, I was in the pews with my mom and my dad going to church. And when I was born in 77. My parents kind of relocated back to South Nashville and worshiped at the old building for a while. And so many of you that are experienced, it's a nice way of saying that here at the Tusculum Church of Christ, maybe knew or remembered my parents from that time. And so Tusculum has always had a special place in the heart of my parents. They talked about it frequently growing up in their time at Tusculum and things like that. I spent 6 years as a probation officer and worked in different levels of the court system in Nashville before I kind of felt the call, if you will, the pull into becoming a minister as well. And that was right before Sam was born. And so Sam is now about to turn 18, which is hard for me to say and think about. He graduates in about 3 weeks. So for the past 17, almost 18 years, I've been doing some type of ministry, whether it was youth ministry, pulpit work. I worked in a seminary where I got one of my degrees from for a little bit there. Jocelyn and I met at Lipscomb University. I think when we went there, we were the last class to graduate with a diploma that said David Lipscomb University. I think after that's when they went through the name change, so I can say I went to David, what do you say? College. So yeah, it was David Lipscomb College, and it was David Lipscomb University, but now they just said Lipscomb University. They changed the name. So I think Jocelyn and I were one of the last classes to go through there. We met the second semester of our freshman year and started dating and haven't quit dating since then. So this August, Lord willing, we'll be married 23 years. We have Sam, 17, and Carter, who is 13. I graduated from Lipscomb, went on and got 2 master's degrees I got a master's of ministry and an MDiv from Heritage Christian University. And then 2020, I finished up a doctorate of ministry at kind of the beginning of COVID. COVID was a blessing for me in that, as I got to nail down and finish writing my dissertation and things like that. So we're going to talk about some other things that happened during 2020 as well in just a little bit as it pertains to this. But I want to talk about the Army Chaplain Corps, because that's something that has been it's been a part of my life for almost the last 2 years, and under my contract, it'll have to be part of my life for at least the next 6 years. And whatever adventure comes along that way. So I'm 2 years into an 8-year contract with them. I have no dreams of retiring from the military or anything like that. I just felt a call to serve, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a little bit. So the Chaplain Corps was established on July 29th, 1775. Tell you a little bit of history about the Chaplain Corps. This was during the American Revolution, and so George Washington was a big proponent of having clergy with his soldiers. And they had no rank, they had no official uniforms, they were allowed an allotment of salary, but it wasn't much. It was maybe like $5 a month or something. But back then that carried everything that you needed. So 1775, this summer we will celebrate our 247th birthday. And we are the second oldest branch in the Army The first was the infantry, so if you think you're gunfighters, that was the first branch that started. The second was the Chaplain Corps. The third was, does anybody know? Lawyers, the JAG Corps. Think about that. Oh yeah, Randy back there is happy with that. So we had our gunfighters, we had our chaplains, the next thing we need our lawyers. So I don't know what that says about the Army, but so we're the second oldest branch in the Army, and we can be proud of that as well. So really, why the Chaplain Corps? So why do we exist? We exist to bring soldiers to God, and the way that we do that is by bringing God to soldiers. Now, this has been hotly debated. There has been times when people have tried to remove the Chaplain Corps from the Army, and that has not been successful as of yet. It has been argued all the way even up to the Supreme Court. I forget the last time there was a couple of Harvard lawyers, students that tried to fight against the establishment cause, and I want to highlight on that in just a little bit. But our goal is to bring God to soldiers. Now think about it. Why would we be worried about the spiritual well-being of soldiers that are fighting? Any thoughts? They're putting their lives on the line. Yes. What else? Joe? Okay. Hope. To give hope in the midst of battle.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind, absolutely. The peace that surpasses all understanding.
Unhappy soldiers don't fight well.
Good point. Unhappy soldiers do not fight well. Look at this. This is General Washington. He actually wrote a lot about having clergy with his soldiers. He wrote this. He said, "It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God and to obey His will, to be grateful in His benefits, and humbly to implore His protection and His favor." He believed it was really, the Chaplain Corps probably would not exist if it wasn't for General George Washington. And the Chaplain Corps really solidified its place in the Army at the Battle of Valley Forge, 1778 to 89, I think it was, the winter during that time. And see, what happened was, and this is Washington over here, there is a stained glass version of this that's at the chaplain school. This has been reproduced many times. And so we've got our clergymen right here praying over soldiers. Some of them are bandaged up. There's snow everywhere. Valley Forge was hard on the soldiers. They lost their will, their hope. They were not happy because they didn't have the supplies. You couldn't just airdrop in a bunch of stuff. It had to be brought in. And so morale got really, really low. And as Randy said, if you're not happy, there's nothing that you can do to make the cold less cold. And imagine what they had to work with. Leather boots that were handmade. Wool clothing that just soaked up all that moisture. They were cold all the time. They were hungry because they didn't have the food supplies like we have today. And so morale was really low. And General Washington said that it was because of the faith and the hope that the clergy put into the soldiers that got them through that horrible winter. And so ever since then, the U.S. Chaplain Corps, they've always been there. So from the Revolutionary War all the way up to Iraq, Afghanistan, and even making preparations for anything that may or may not happen in Eastern Europe, we're ready to go and do that. So just a little bit of an overview here. So as I said before, in the Revolutionary War, there was an allotment there for wages to be paid, but you didn't have rank, you didn't wear certain uniforms. Going down into the Civil War, that was more militia-driven. And you had the local pastor in the area would be a person who would minister to troops. In fact, one of the first, there are 8 chaplains that were awarded the Medal of Honor since the establishment of the Chaplain Corps. The very first chaplain to be awarded the Medal of Honor was Chaplain Whitehead, Chaplain Whitehead, and he earned the medal, or was awarded the Medal of Honor for events that happened at the Battle of Stones River in Murfreesboro. That was the first chaplain to be awarded the Medal of Honor. In the Spanish-American War, they were called frontier chaplains. So they would have kind of circulated around, much like a minister would have done post-restoration period. They might have like three or four 3 or 4 different churches that they would go to. They would drive around from Frontier Forward Outpost, because remember, the country is expanding. It's going west at a not so rapid pace. They're expanding out. And so World War I and World War II saw rapid expansion in the Chaplain Corps. All throughout this time, up until the early 2000s, the school that trained the chaplains moved all around the U.S., and it wasn't until the early 2000s that it found a permanent home at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where I spent the last 9 weeks when I was there. So going all the way down, even in the Korean War, there was a chaplain by the name of Chaplain Emil Capone. He was a prisoner of war. And as a prisoner of war, he gave his daily rations to the soldiers that were around him, took care of his soldiers, could have been placed in better, because he was an officer, he was a chaplain, could have had better places put for him, could have gotten more food, but he wanted to stay with the soldiers. And that's one thing that we do. We go where our soldiers are at. We do what our soldiers are doing. And he ultimately died and was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor as well. And his remains were just repatriated within the last year and brought home. And he was given, they did the whole dignified transfer of remains, and he was just interred with his family. And so, Emil Capone. And then in Vietnam, there were 2 chaplains that were awarded the Medal of Honor. But you saw the Chaplain Corps, I want to say it was about, I have some figures here, I think. And in World War II, they hit its high point of about 8,000 chaplains, and in Vietnam, there was about 1,800 chaplains at that time. So it's fluctuated up and down, as we're even seeing right now with that as well. And so if you come over here to the early Iraq of Afghanistan, in 2001, we switched to more of this kind of UMT, Unified Ministry Team, and we began working with what we call our 56 mics. Those are our Chaplain Assistants that are now called Religious Affairs Specialists. I've got a video in just a minute that I want to show you. And in that video, if you see anybody with a rifle, that's not a chaplain. We're non-combatants, so we don't carry weapons with us. And so in that video, when you see those individuals that are holding rifles, those are our Chaplain Assistants. And the Chaplain Assistants are the Religious Affairs Specialists. What they do is they provide security for the UMT team, and they also function as a Religious Affairs Specialist. They are administrative assistants. They do things for us. My Religious Affairs Specialist is Sergeant Holt. He's got a lot of experience. And so he helps me with everything of making sure that my vehicle is ready for me. He makes sure that I have all the things that I'm going to need. Later this summer, we're going to do a 2-week training event at Camp Shelby, Mississippi. He'll make sure that I have communion supplies, that if I'm taking any hymnals or anything like that, that those are boxed up, that they're loaded, that they're going. So he's kind of he makes sure that things are happening. He's like the Melanie Moon of my ministry team there. Make sure everything's going on. So the sort of our chaplains have always been there. So the big question is why? When I applied, I was 43 years old. 43 years old, a son that was in the middle of high school, a son that was in middle school, wife been married 20 years at that point, good job, everything's going good. Why do you want to join the Army? Well, the quick answer is this: because no one plays Navy as a kid. So I wish Ursula was in here, but I kid. We love all our fellow, our sister, but the Marines, the Air Force, all of them. We all work together, but we do like to pick fun at one another. But no, the big question is why? Why would I do this? And so this is where I tell a little bit of what I believe my calling story is. My first interaction with a chaplain was when Sam was in between the 2nd and 3rd grade. When Sam was in the 2nd grade at Easel Harding Christian School, he came home one day and said, "Dad, I want to join Cub Scouts." I said, "Sure, let's do this." I didn't think he would stick with it. He just finished his Eagle project, so he actually stuck with it. I had to kind of drag him over the end, but that in between that 1st and 2nd year, Middle Tennessee Council does something pretty cool. I don't know if they do it everywhere, Steve or Randy, but on Memorial Day, they go to the Veterans Cemetery and they put flags on all the graves of the veterans. You guys have seen that. I mean, Channel 4, all of them, they do stories like that. So I went to that first Memorial Day flag place and was just overwhelmed. And there was a chaplain there who gave an invocation. He gave a little talk about perseverance and dedication. And I was like, ministers in the Army. That's pretty cool. So I went, and I've always had this desire to serve. I vividly remember the events of September 11, 2001. I mean, you do. And I was watching all my friends and things like that go and serve. And so there was a little bit of, Will, you need to do your part as well. So this was long after, Sam was born in 2004, so this is even 2010. This has been within the last 10 years. Is we're there, and so I get his contact information and said, I would like to have lunch with you sometime. I'm interested in this. What a minister in the military does. And so I had lunch with him. He put me in touch with some other people, and I met the state chaplain of the Tennessee Army National Guard now, who was just promoted to Colonel Mark Phillips, Chaplain Colonel Mark Phillips. And I began to talk with him. I was like, okay, I want to do this. Sign me up. I want to be an Army chaplain. And he's like, well, you got to have a Master's in Divinity. You don't have that yet. How long is that going to take? About 3 years. Okay. He's like, you don't have a religious endorsement, which Paul right here just meant. All chaplains have to be endorsed by their denominational headquarters. Do you see the problem with us? We don't have one. But we actually do. The Fairfax Church of Christ has taken it upon themselves to be our denominational headquarters. There's a really cool guy by the name of Chaplain Colonel Payne. Really good friends with Richard Thompson. So he'll come back into my story here in just a little bit. The church is really a small network. So they take it upon themselves. He goes, you need a religious endorsement as well. I didn't have that. I didn't even know what it was. He says, you need to go to chaplain school. So it's not like, you hear those stories of people like going down to the recruitment office and they leave it on a bus the next day or something like that. I think maybe that happened a long time ago. That does not happen now. There's a lot of medical screening, particularly when you're as old as I was, but that was 10 years ago. So I was in my early 30s at that point. So I started looking at all that. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. But life happened. Boys grew up. I got involved in the job. The degree was taking longer than I thought it was. I was doing it part-time. Moved around, had another child. It kept going on. But all throughout those 10 years, I would see Chaplain Phillips. I would see him at events. I was going, well, good. So I'd kind of re-engage with him. I'm going to do it this time. He would even reach out for me from time to time. So as you had the surge and the different things that were happening in Iraq and Afghanistan, we need chaplains. Are you interested? I'm interested. But life would happen. Things would just kind of fall away. And so that brings me to 2020. We all know what happened in January, March. January, we started hearing this thing called coronavirus, COVID-19. And as much as Wilbur and I were like, it's never going to come over here to the U.S. Don't ask us for advice, right? We missed that one. I was like, it's never going to come over here. It's going to stay over in China or wherever it was. So it came with a vengeance. And I remember the meeting where we're like, okay, we're just going to shut the doors of the church building. I remember where I was, where they were like, we're starting to shut things down now. So the blessing in that was I was able to finish my dissertation for my D-Min. But I was doing videos, the Facebook Lives, and I was doing those things, but it just really wasn't fulfilling. I was like, if this is what ministry is going to be, count me out. This is no fun at all. Ministry used to be fun. Jocelyn and I would take a walk every day through our neighborhood, and she goes, you always talked about chaplains. I just wondered. And so I reached out to Chaplain Phillips again. I had to find him. He was at the Naval War College in Maine, checking off a box so that he could be promoted to be colonel at the time. And so I said, I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm Will Tidwell, live in South Nashville. Are there any vacancies? I would like to talk with you. And then my next question was, I might be a little too old for this. And he responded back. He's like, no, we've got vacancies. But his question was, are you serious this time? I was like, I'm serious. And so then I got to have a meeting with the elders, right? I remember this meeting. I was like, this one meeting, we were meeting in the TYM at that time, and we were really talking about, how are we navigating this COVID-19, and when are we going to get things started back? And I had something at the end, so I made my pitch to him. I said, guys, I really want to do this. I feel like I'm called to this. And I remember Kerwin at the end kind of looked, and I kind of like ended it, and Kerwin looked at me, and he was like, so you don't need an answer tonight, do you? I was like, no, you guys can talk about it. And so the next meeting, which was maybe like a week or two later, they kind of came in, and I'm assuming they met afterwards, and I don't know what happened in that conversation afterwards. But I remember something that Dan said to me. Dan was like, initially hearing this, that you want to join the Army, as a father, he's going, this is a horrible idea. Why would you want to do this? You're not watching the news. We're at war right now, even though maybe things were winding down and things like that. Why? Initially, I would tell my son this is a bad idea. But they understood that I felt a passion at the age of 43 to begin this process. And really the thing, I wasn't in that conversation after I left, but having conversations with him afterwards, I think a voice of reason in there was Richard Thompson. Because when Richard and Lauren and them started a church in, I want to say, North Carolina, they brought in this young man by the name of Gary Payne, who is now retired Chaplain Colonel Payne, who was a reserve chaplain when they were there doing this church plant. And he got to experience it. And to him, it was like, I don't see the big deal. You know, we've done this. Gary, he got deployed to Gulf War. He went away. It was fine. We took care of things. In fact, we kind of saw it as he was a missionary when he was gone. And so Richard did me a solid on that one. And so I met with them and they said, Will, you know, how are we to tell you if you feel like this is something that you're going to do that you shouldn't do it? And so that's when I had to really do a gut check and go, okay, is this God calling me or is it not? Because this isn't something that you do for the ribbons and the badges or to wear the uniform or anything like that. You have to want to do this. You have to want to do this particular type of ministry. Because it is hard. It is harder, but I feel that it is so fulfilling, this type of ministry. So let's go a little bit further. And so what I did was I put in an application. I got my endorsement, everything. I started the process in about April of 2020. I was sitting at I kept waiting for, it has to go through, you know, your commission has to go through Congress, it has to be approved, you have to be selected, all these different things that check you out. You do this massive background investigation because you have to get a security clearance, all those things. I just get an email one day that says, congratulations, you're a first lieutenant in the Tennessee Army National Guard, please contact your unit. I mean, there was no swearing in or anything. You see those with your hand up, all that stuff. Didn't happen. They said, because of COVID, we can't do that. You virtually signed it when you signed the document, which I should probably do a better job of reading the things that I signed. So I was like, where's my unit? They said, you're with the 278th Armored Cavalry Regiment, which was 2nd Squadron, which was where Chaplain Phillips did his time as a young lieutenant and captain. And I've got other really, I can only say God-ordained moments where individuals from the 278th 2nd Squadron ACR have come in and out of my life. And now I'm their chaplain again. Or I'm their chaplain there. So if I say this is God-ordained, that God has called me to this, I do believe it. So I had to go off to chaplain school. And so I've got a little short video here I want to show you. This kind of highlights chaplain school. As I said before, you will see individuals in here who are carrying weapons. Those are chaplain assistants. Those aren't chaplains. What you will not see in this video is when we weren't out in the field doing the cool G.I. Joe stuff that you'll see here, is that we were in a classroom having briefings and lectures on how to be a staff officer, how to do military decision-making process, how to do counseling, how to get certified in family and marriage counseling, homiletics. We were doing a lot of different things in classes from sun up to about sundown. So let's watch this short video. I think it's about 3 or 4 minutes.
Please do not let fear stop you from taking that step forward. And I know that it is a big decision. It's a big decision for families and individuals, but I would just encourage you to really take the time to assess whether or not it's fear, your own fear, that is stopping you from taking that next step.
It's cool stuff. Imagine you're a preacher doing this stuff. Notice the mask. This was the class before mine, so they were still under some of the COVID protocols.
value and the importance of valuing my words within that time frame I have, so that I can provide that healthy religious support for a soldier, or help increase the morale and the ethics of that soldier within the battalion program. It's been an awesome opportunity. You got to be a part of it.
So, what is it that I actually do? We'll talk about that. So, like I said, what you didn't see in there was the many, many hours of classroom instruction that we had. I liked going out in the field. Crawling around under the wires was cool. Obstacle course, fun, repelling, loved it. Didn't like the gas chamber at all. Anybody that's ever had a prior service and you've done that, one of the worst days of my life. If you want to talk about fear and trusting in God, if they're teaching you to trust in your equipment, I mean, you can get some trust lessons there that will go forever. Nearly had a hyperventilated in my mask and just, I wanted to run out of there, but I got through it. So, what is it that I actually do? I want to share with you this. This is how I minister now. As when I'm doing my battle assemblies or my weekend drills, 2 weeks, or 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer, is we have two core competencies. We advise and we provide. And the first thing that we advise, you say, well, who is it that we advise and what are you advising them on? If you look at a battalion structure, I am a special staff with the commander. The commander for my unit is Lieutenant Colonel Bradford, is his name. And so he has on his special staff, he has his executive officer, Major Rivard, and he has me. And so then below that, we have our S1, S2, S3, S4, the different shops and the different officers that are underneath that. So the commander has all this, the weight of the battalion is on him and making decisions and things like that. So I advise him on matters of morale. So give me some response here. Why would morale be important in an Army unit? We've talked a little bit about this. What are some other thoughts? Why is morale so important?
And how you're going to do your job, essentially.
Okay. It's how you're going to do your job.
Contagious.
Morale is contagious. A bad attitude can just go on. What else? Think about a forward deployed and it gets around, you've got about 4 or 5 more months on your deployment and you're coming upon November. What do you think the morale of the troops are going to be? They're thinking about Thanksgiving. They're thinking about Christmas. They're thinking about their family. And if they have missions that are coming up, that low morale could affect the combat effectiveness of them. And so one thing that the chaplain does is the chaplain makes the rounds. I go around, I'm in the motor pool, I'm going and, if somebody's working on a truck, I'm kicking them on the boot. Hey, how's it going? I'm learning. How's your wife doing? How are your kids doing? Because I need to know how their morale is because I need to report that to the commander because if someone needs to be pulled off the line, I have to give the commander a reason why. And last summer when we were at Fort Hood for a month, there were a couple times where I had to say, sir, this Bradley unit out here is being run ragged. They've had a lot of injuries because they're going, and they need a little bit of a break because they're starting to make some really bad decisions. Morale is kind of low. Give them an hour or so to rest and refit, things like that. So we also advise our commanders on morals. What's the importance of that, do you think? Else?
They know that John, the little infantry, let them know that they're being, if they're needing, if they need a rest, or they thinking of their families and trying to.
You want to make sure that they have a good mindset.
Positive attitude.
Positive attitude. Because we are the good guys, right? And I'd like to think that even in the chaos and the bad things of war that I've not experienced it, that we are the guys that are trying to do things the right way. And I've heard stories, not with my unit, but I've heard stories as we went through chaplain school and things like that of units that went overseas and they made some really bad moral decisions that really taint the mission that the Army may be doing. You think about an Army unit that's going overseas. Let's say there is an Army unit that's going over to the Ukraine right now. And you get a bunch of soldiers that on the weekend, they're disrespecting the women of the Ukraine, they're acting foolish, they're showing out, they're just becoming a disturbance. That's not the type of message that we want to send as our force goes forward. We want to be that person that when they say, oh yes, we want the 278th to come back because they did a really good job. That they honored what we honored. They believed they were here helping us. And so morals is important as well. And this is an interesting one here. I'd love to hear what you think of this response is. So we advise on matters of religion as it pertains to the battle. So as we're going through the military decision-making process, I'm in there with our commander, advising him on matters of religion as it pertains to the battle. What do you think that entails?
There are rules.
There are rules, absolutely. What else? I'm praying for them. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute as well. See, it's interesting. We come out of 20 years of doing what's called coin operations, counterinsurgencies. It's very strategic fight. We're moving into something, if anything pops off in the Eastern European, it's going to be something called LSCO, large-scale combat operations. It's a peer-to-near-peer force. So we roll in our tanks and they have equal capabilities. It's going to be things like we've never seen before, or we haven't seen in quite some time. But as we were doing coin operations and we were going in and we were working with other agencies and we were pushing out ISIS and the Taliban and things like that, we may have to go in and use a building. But if that building is being used as an education facility or it's being used as a healthcare facility or if it's a mosque or something like that, the last thing we want to do is get ill will with those people in that village. And so I have to advise the commander on what is the religious makeup of this area that we're going to be going into. What are some buildings that you want to stay away from? What are some traditions in that area? What are some things like that? So these are my first core competency is that I advise. And so here's me actually advising our XO, Major Rivard right there. I think this was a briefing where I was giving a COVID-19 vaccination update. And then, I don't know if we're in the midst of this. You could, if you did not want to take the vaccine, you could apply for a religious exemption. So I had to do religious exemption interviews and demos. And so I was giving him a briefing on that. What I really like about advising the commander, and particularly with my commander and my XO, is that they will always say this. They'll say, hey, Chap, pray for us. And I'll have the opportunity to stop and say, what do you need me to pray for? Pray for the church. Pray for our decision making. Pray for our force as we go forward. So, David was saying just a minute ago, we pray. Absolutely, we pray. I've spent a lot of time praying with and for my soldiers in and around the exercises, on phone later, text messaging, and things like that. So the next thing that we do, our next core competency is that we provide. We provide religious services. Does anybody know what our legal authority is to do that? I know that little thing called the First Amendment of the Constitution. What do you say? Under God. It could be one of them. But the First Amendment of the Constitution says, the Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. You've heard that? That's where we get this whole idea of separation of church and state. But notice the rest of it says, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's what chaplains do. We provide for the free exercise of religion. We allow, going all the way back. Remember, General Washington, saw that it was important for chaplains to be there, to give that hope, to give that assurance to the soldiers on the battlefield. So I help ensure the free exercise of religion as it pertains to the First Amendment, and that was added in 1791. So how does this look? That's me providing religious support and the free exercise of religion in the middle of Fort Hood, Texas, which they call is the great place, but I didn't see anything great about it. It was really hot. There were scorpions. It was hot. It was hot. This is me doing a chapel service right there in front of my Humvee. I got my kit all decked out. I've got it up here if you want to see what a chaplain carries, deployed and things like that. This is me here doing. I happened up. I was rolling with our commander one day, and he was checking on the tactical operations center to talk. And I got out of the vehicle and I saw these guys here. You'll notice that they're right here is smoking. It's kind of the smoking corner. Had to get away from everything. Actually, I don't think they're supposed to be that close to the Humvee, but anyway, they're smoking. I just went up and said, "Hey guys, how's it going?" And before I know it, I'm out there. I'm kind of giving them a word of the day. And a word of the day is a really kind of quick 3 to 5 minute message to them. As you see, I forgot to put my sunscreen on that day, but I am rocking the Ray-Bans. Those are pretty cool. This is me counseling with and praying with some soldiers out in the middle of a field in Fort Hood that's very hot. I hadn't said that already. as you can tell. But this is providing for the free exercise of religion. And so this is me on a drill weekend during my 2 weeks, or 1 week during the summer, or 1 week during the month. Here I am, and there's Major Rivard right there. But this is I will do several chapel services on a weekend. And this is one. There's about 15 to 18 people in there. It's kind of interesting. We've got a full colonel back here, and then we've got a young private over there. He's a medical officer. Here's the XO. We've got a lot of medical staff, a lot of combat medics and things like that. We've got our S1, and then we've got our human resources, and they just all come in, and we have a service. It's usually 15 to no longer than 20 minutes because it's a tough training schedule. But what I'm doing when I'm not doing that is I'm going around and I'm doing that battlefield circulation, the ministry of presence. What's going on in your life? How are you doing? Is everything okay? Do you need to talk? And a lot of times it's planting a seed, and I'll get a text message later, hey, Chaplain, I want to talk to you. Hey, Chaplain, we need to talk. And so I've gone to people's houses. I've met them for coffee. I've taken them to AA meetings. I've taken them to behavioral health. I've done a lot of things for my soldiers in just the almost 2 years that I've been there. But it begins with these relationships that you build with them. Very similar to what we do in here. We make relationships, and then when we're in times of need and crisis, what do? We reach out to those people that we know are there to help us. So a lot of people ask, do we baptize? Absolutely. People say, I hear you can't baptize. I hear you can't pray in Jesus' name. That's not true. So here's one of my fellow chaplains baptizing an individual. If you notice, he is wearing a watch cap here, which means it is cold. I think this happened at Fort Campbell. I'm not sure. We got to get creative sometimes. There's not always a baptistry, but, in a full kind of, here is water, what doth hinder us from being baptized moment. Here we go. You have to get like a little, you got to get creative. And my favorite is this one right here. This is a box of MREs, boxes of MREs that are stacked up with plastic on the inside and sandbags up top to make a baptistry. Is that not cool? To me, that's pretty cool. And I've seen pictures online because I follow all the different Chaplain Corps and stuff like that. Regularly at the end of Ranger School, when the Ranger School chaplain is kind of closing up the school there and things like that, he'll have several baptisms of the Ranger students that are going through. The gospel of Christ is being preached in the army. That free exercise of religion, we're making sure that is happening, and souls are being won for Christ. And this is some of the things that I'm doing on the weekends when I'm not here with you. So as we're doing this, we've got three main roles. So we've got our two competencies. We provide and we advise. And then as we provide, the things that we do here is we nurture the living, we care for the wounded, and we honor the following. Now, the lion's share of things that I do as a chaplain is I do this nurture the living. Now, as I care for the wounded, I'm a force multiplier to those combat medics. There's a lot of things that I got to learn how to do in the chaplain school that we do. I can do massive bleeding. I can help with airways. I can do a lot of really kind of cool stuff that I can be a force multiplier when there's a mass casualty event. But then also what I can do as care for the wounded is when there's those individuals that are expect them to die, and they have to shift their focus onto someone else. I can go there and give them a good quality of life as they're passing on and pray with them and talk with them. And then the thing that we are honored to do, and it's the thing that we hate that we have to do, is honor the fallen. With those, either a dignified transfer of remains, whether it's doing a memorial service, a graveside service, presenting that flag to the family, things like that, are a great role in which we do, where we bring honor to the soldier and bring care and comfort to the family that's grieving at the time. So those are our three main roles that we do. You heard us talk about that: nurture, care, and honor. Most of what we do is nurture the living by giving them the support that they need. As I said, I'm part of the 278th Armored Cavalry Regiment. We can trace our roots back to the Cavalry Mounted, which is why we wear the Stetsons. As Harvey says, this is the hat. Pretty cool. People don't like it. Actually, it's kind of weird to wear, but once you get into it, you gotta have a little swagger to wear it, things like that. Only the Cav wears them, Air Cav, and the Armored Cav does. And so we wear those from time to time. There's a lot of history wrapped up in the cavalry. I think it's pretty cool. The Tennessee Army National Guard, particularly the 278th Armored Cavalry Regiment, we have Bradley fighting vehicles, we have tanks, we have scouts, we have snipers, we have mounted and dismounted infantry. We do a lot of really interesting stuff. There's not a whole lot of armored combat brigade teams, and we're one of the only ones that's going to be re-outfitted this next year to 2 years. So it is very likely that the 278th will be called on before my time, my contract with the Army National Guard is up. We returned from Poland about 3 years ago, and since that time, these are some of the things that the Army National Guard has been doing domestically here in the United States. Most of this is in Tennessee. Remember the floods? This is recently. Army National Guard went to go help. Do you remember the tornadoes that happened? Not the one that was in Kentucky, but the one that started out near John Tune Airport and went all the way almost to Cookville. You remember PR. General Holmes met with each one of those mayors and said, I don't know what we can provide, but we're going to provide everything that we can. And so we had individuals that were on active duty orders for a long time, whether it was engineers or just people helping pass out water, since the Army National Guard was there. We don't call them riots, we call them civil unrest because riots hurt people's feelings. So at the civil unrest during the summer of 2020, 278th was there in some pretty important places during that time. I've heard a lot of stories. This was during the time that I was applying, so I missed out on all of these, and I've been doing other things, and I've not been on any of these domestic missions. And then at the inauguration on January the 6th, 2021, we had some soldiers there at the inauguration to help the security of that. And then they were there for probably 2 months afterwards. And I've heard some really interesting stories from that. During all this time, since 2020, our soldiers have been doing the COVID-19 mission. If you went and got a vaccination at some of the ag centers and the fairgrounds, you may have had one of my soldiers vaccinate you. They also help with intake. They help with just a lot of just different processes of making sure that people are getting those vaccines. And then most recently, we had a group of soldiers go down to the southwestern border and help what was going on there. They helped the state of Texas. The state of Tennessee and the state of Texas have a really good relationship. In fact, we have a unit of the 278th down right off post of there in Fort Hood. But the militia cavalry of the Tennessee military goes all the way back to the fighting down there at the Alamo and places like that. We've got a really cool history. So the mission, we've been busy for the last 3 years, which it doesn't seem like it's going to let up because of things that go on. So the question is, what's next for me? And I like this because there's a lot of uncertainty there. There is some certainty, but there's a lot of uncertainty. So I like to think it's more like this. You're looking at it, trying to figure it all out of what's going on. As I said before, I'm in year 2 of an 8-year commitment with them. In some ways, this has gone by really quickly. During this time, my unit is typically on about a 5-year reset before we are considered mission qualified. And so before I finish up my contract with them, it's very likely that I will see some sort of deployment. The way that it's, and I don't have any sort of inside information, but the way that it's looking right now, there will probably be something in the Eastern European area, Germany, Poland, not the Ukraine right now, but that could be something, but that's going to be at least probably 2, if not 3 years down into the future before something like that happens. But I'm going to continue doing my 1 week in a month, 2 weeks during the summer, and the occasional mission that happens here stateside. If you're watching what's going on with the riot, the protests in and around the U.S. Capitol and state Capitol and things like that, I guarantee you that the National Guard is watching that very closely. They've already had some dust-ups in, I think, L.A. and maybe even Chicago. And they've got units that are experts in that sort of just kind of containing and controlling and preserving the Capitol buildings and things like that and ensuring the safety. And so we stand ready. That's one reason why I've kind of got my 3-day pack up here, because if I have to go and spend some time away, it's ready, go get with my unit and do what I need to do. But what this means for Tusculum is that you guys get an additional missionary, a new missionary as part of the missions that you guys support. I know last summer I was regularly texting the elders going, hey, I can't tell you who it is, but I've got this private who just found out that his dad died. I had to go tell him that his father passed away. Or I just heard about this. Or while I was in Texas, I had to do 4 death notifications of individuals back home that had passed away. One of them was a little brother who got run over by a car. And it's sad because in some instances, then you have to work through not only grief, but how am I going to get this soldier home? And I had some soldiers that were on the verge of maybe making some bad choices, mental health-wise, and I had to walk them safely to a hospital and make sure that they get home safely, back to their loved ones back home. And is there a care plan for them once they get back home? They can help with help they need. So I'm going to continue serving on my weekends and my 2 weeks during the summer, and I'm going to ask you guys to continue to pray for the Army, pray for the world, pay your taxes because it helps us out, things like that. And just kind of keep me and my soldiers in your prayers as we do that. When I'm not here on a weekend, it's because I'm with my soldiers. The 278th has 1st Squadron, 2nd Squadron, 3rd Squadron, 4th Squadron, and then there's a support squadron. Within my 2nd Squadron, I have 7 armories. From McMinnville, from Cookville, where our headquarters is, all the way up to Jamestown, all the way over to Gallatin. We have a det down there, and down to McMinnville. And so I've got 7 armories in that area. So on a weekend, I'm a road warrior. I'm going around. I'm not seeing all of them because it's impossible to. If they're going out to the field, I'm trying to be out there in the field with them. If they're going to shoot, if they're going to ride their tanks, if they're going to do all that really cool stuff, I'm trying to be out in the field with them so that I can minister to them and get to know them as best I can. That's the quick and dirty. Are there any questions? Any questions at all that you may have? Anything? Yes, ma'am.
You said you didn't try with guns?
I did not, no. So let me talk about that. We are, by the Geneva Convention, we are considered non-combatants. So the way that the reg says is that we cannot shoot for qualification or carry a weapon into battle. So that's why we have our chaplain assistant or our religious affairs specialist with us. So
He knows how to shoot.
yeah, he better know how to shoot. So yeah, that was hard for my mom to take. It was hard for my mom to take her little baby boy at the age of 43 joining the Army. That was a difficult conversation right there. But then also for her to realize that I'm a non-combatant going into battle potentially. And so, yeah, we're not trained in firearms. No. I do have, I scare him with my tactical spork here. Get back. So honestly, if the chaplain would ever have to pick up a weapon, a lot of people hadn't done their job. So, and it's interesting. Your question just a second is the way that the battle was being fought in the coin operation, and a lot of this is yet to be written because of what may or may not happen in Eastern Europe. Is like everything was really kind of forward operating based. The FOB was out there, and you would operate from that, and you would come back to it. And there was ever since the last chaplain was killed in battle, Chaplain Getz, they kind of kept the chaplains back because when the chaplain dies or gets hurt, you don't talk about morale going down. A lot of people see the chaplain as almost like a religious totem. He brings you good luck. I got this one of my group, the E-Troop, when they're about to shoot or they're doing around their gunnery or something like that, they're like, hey, chaplain, we want you out with us. You're our good luck charm. I'm like, I'm not the good luck charm. Like, set up some of those prayers for us. And so, praying with things like that. But it's going to be interesting to see if we do go to a LSCO combat environment as the battlefield is constantly evolving, how far outside of the perimeter the chaplain's going to be going. Did you have a question, Randy?
What is translatable from what you are doing to what we should be doing in a congregation? It seems to me that, the gung-ho chaplain is really the model for the Christian who's supposed to be doing what he or she is supposed to be doing. So how can we take inspiration from, learn from your experience and try to pull it into our own lives?
That's a great question, because actually our last elders meeting last Monday night, we were talking, we've been reading a book together. We just started reading a book together and studying it. And it's on this adaptive leadership model where you look at the things that are going on around you and how do you minister to that. And all around us, things have changed and we've adapted with it, whether it's how we pay our bills or how we make our meals or are we doing electric or gasoline cars and things like that. We've adapted to a lot around us, but we really haven't adapted our evangelical model. It's we're here, come to us. But it really needs to be that taking God to the soldiers mentality. And so if there ever has been a need for that Great Commission, it's not to just be here and wait for people to come in the door. They may, probably not though. And so we really need to be taking God to people. And so I see that as something that we can begin doing better. And we've begun having discussions about that here amongst our shepherding body as well. Good questions? Yes, Ellis?
I'm just curious, have you not everybody's a believer, but when a set person comes in the Army, do you come out being a believer?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, is that not everybody is a believer. Every faith group and every denomination is represented in the Army. And something you've never even heard of before. Do you believe that Jediism is a recognized religion? These guys that believe that there's a force out there. We've seen a rise in people, and we think this is because of movies like Game of Thrones and things like that, but Norse paganism has really gone a rise, and they also can get beard waivers and people want to wear beards. But what do you do about those? Have we seen people that were not believers that become believers? Let me tell you about one of my classmates at Chaplain School. He's a Green Beret with the 10th Special Forces Group. Sergeant, I mean, he's got all the ribbons and badges. He's done it all. This guy is G.I. Joe. During his last deployment, he sat down with the chaplain, and he heard a message like he'd never heard it before. It changed his life. He said, I was brought to tears. He goes, and I realized that my life didn't have to be the way that it was. I didn't have to carry that guilt of the things that I knew that I was doing wrong. I didn't have to carry. I did not have to live that way. That is the power in the changing of the gospel, that my life can be radically different. And he knew he was going to take his Green Beret off, and he was going to become a chaplain. And so think what his story is going to be. So, Brother Ellis, it happens that people change their life because of that. Any other questions? It is a mission. It's a calling. Question I get asked a lot, and I was emailed this a couple times, is because some of you of prior service maybe had a different experience with the Chaplain Corps. I know my father did. And he had a lot of questions for me. He said, Will, are you going to have to jeopardize the word I'm looking for. Are you going to have to compromise your beliefs for other people's faith groups? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. A lot of questions I get asked, I say, I hear you can't pray in Jesus' name. I'll always pray in Jesus' name. And will continue to do so. If they don't want me to, I'll give them back my soldier suit and I'll go back to civilian life. But that free exercise of religion, the Establishment Clause, my endorsement, the Fairfax Church of Christ says that's how I'm supposed to pray. Now, there's obviously certain things that I can't do. I can't pray with my Muslim soldiers that may be there. I can't provide last rites to a Catholic soldier. There's certain Jewish things I probably can't do because I don't know how to do any of those things. And they go outside of what my faith group allows. And so I minister where I can. And if I had one of those soldiers come to me and they requested those sort of things, my core competencies are advise and provide. If I can't do it, I can find someone that can. There are Catholic chaplains in the Corps somewhere. I can find them. And if I can't find a Catholic chaplain, what I can do is find another Catholic soldier that can pray with this individual. If I can't even find that, I can say, here's what I can do. I can give you a sacred space over there that no one else is going to come into, and you can go in there and you can pray. Does that work? Sometimes it's finding people vegan or halal or kosher MREs that they need. Making sure that they have so that they can have that free exercise of religion. But my chapel talks, I don't care if you're Muslim or if you're Southern Baptist or Church of Christ, well, I'm going to be preaching like I usually preach here on a Sunday morning or Wednesday night or whatever it is. That's my message. And I'm unashamed of that message. But I'm not going to go out of my way to abuse that right and that time in front of me. I'm not going to, if I'm ever asked to give an invocation and say some sort of event, I'm not going to use that opportunity to disrespect people by going, oh, Lord, what they really need to do is obey the gospel and be immersed in the waters of baptism. I'm not going to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to plant these seeds so that I can have those moments where the soldiers come up to me and say, Chaplain, I'm talking about something. And I've already begun to experience those. Just as we all have, and maybe you've done in your own life from those individuals that you've come in contact with. We've got about 2 more minutes. Yes, Dave.
Talk about the challenges you had with, I know you had a group of guys that went through some real turmoil.
Yeah, so January, we had I typically drill the first or second weekend of every month, but it fluctuates on the training schedule. I got a call that we had a soldier suicide out in East Tennessee. It was outside of our squadron. And there was no one east of Nashville. There was no chaplain east of Nashville that was able to go render care for them. And they said, hey, can you cover down and can you help out? And so I reached out to my training command and said, look, guys, Colonel, I know that we had this on the training schedule and I was going to do these chaplains and things like that, but I need to go out here. They had this suicide. Can I go do that? He said, sure, check. Roger, go do that. And so I went, and as soon as I got off the phone, said, yes, I'll be there. I'll cover down. I'll help you guys. We got another phone call. Another soldier in the same unit had also committed suicide. One of those was intentional. We believe that the other one may not have been intentional, maybe an accident, whatever it is. But it doesn't matter. I mean, this unit now has lost 2 soldiers in like a 48-hour period. And so I spent that weekend going all the way out to Johnson City and spending time with family members and unit members. And it was interesting. It was January. They were actually going to, and no, I think that might have been actually December, because they were going to use that weekend, drill weekend, to kind of do a Christmas event. The family readiness group, the wives had come in and had decorated the drill hall. And now over in the corner was a soldier cross honoring these soldiers that had died. And so it turns from a time of celebration to a time of remembrance. And so they're looking at me like, hey, Chap, what do we do? I'm like, look, don't cancel the event. Just cancel the focus of the event. You guys have fun. You guys need to do this. Because the worst thing you want is these guys to just go back home and think about it and drink about it and things like that. It's contagious. And so they needed that time to share their stories about their battle buddies and heal through that. So, anything else? Yes?
What is the most important thing you have gained so far?
The most important, there's 2 things, I'll share this. The most important thing is that people have to be the main thing. You gotta love your Joes. You gotta watch out Joe's soldiers, whatever you want to call them. You gotta look out after them because they're what matters. If their morale is not where it needs to be. And so I can't sit in my office, I can't do things like that. And so I'm hoping that being a better chaplain will make me a better minister here, and being a better minister here will help me be a better chaplain there. There's a lot of crossover things. And the second thing that I've learned that I firmly believe is a very biblical model is you deal with things at the lowest level. And so when Jesus said, if you have a problem with your brother, what do? You go to your brother. You don't go to your brother's friends. You don't go to your brother's mom. You don't go to your brother's dad or grandparent. And so when you have issues in a unit, in the military hierarchy and structure, you don't go to someone's commander. You don't go to someone's, you deal with things at the lowest level so that things can be dealt with. Because when you escalate things, and I'm going to say what we have a tendency to do in the church sometimes, we run right to an elder. Blows things up. Still things at a low level. Still with brother to brother, or ministry leader to brother, and things like that. And things can be dealt with a lot easier. So those are the 2 things I've really kind of taken away with. And I've had to experience that at chaplain school about dealing with things at the lowest level possible. Because you don't want to, you can ruin people's careers. And you can ruin people's Christian career, if you will, in our life, by dealing with things improperly. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. I'm going to be around here. Like I said, I got my stuff up here. May not let you wear the hat, Harvey, but I can show you kind of what I will be taking forward deployed and things like that. I've got my communion and things, all things that the chaplain carries in on my vest there. But I want to end in prayer here. And as I said, you guys continue to pray for me as I do this ministry. And anytime you want to say, how are things going? Don't hesitate to ask me. Because I said, I really see this as an extension of the missions that you guys are doing here. Matthew 28, 19 through 20, go to all. And right now that all is domestically, but before I'm done here, that all is going to be, I'm going to go somewhere. I hope it doesn't happen, but it looks like that will probably happen before my time can be officially up in the Tennessee Army National Guard. Let's pray. Almighty God, Lord, we do love you and we praise you, Lord. We are all vessels of your glory and your mercy and your grace. And Lord, I pray that as we leave here boldly, that we're unashamed of the message that we bring, but that we bring it with love and respect and honor and grace. Lord, I pray for those that are sick, for those that are hurting, for those that are searching, that they get the healing, that they find what they're looking for, and they find the peace that they need above all things. And Lord, I pray for this country and all the good decisions, the bad decisions, the indifference that we're experiencing right now. But Lord, I pray for those that raise their hand, the men, the women, who swore an oath to protect, as dysfunctional as we are at times, to protect us from those that want to rip away our freedoms and want to change our way of life. Lord, I pray for them. I pray for those that are leading them, for those that are providing religious support to them as well, for their families back home. Lord, I pray for them. I pray for those that are here in the streets of Knowlesville, Nashville, Brentwood, and even far out, that are your soldiers right now that are taking the message of Christ into their homes and into the schools and into the communities. Lord, we need your prayers as well. And Lord, I pray that you lift us up. You give us the courage and the boldness that we need, because we need you, Lord. We need you each and every hour. Lord, be with us tonight as we rest, and as we rise up tomorrow, refreshed, renewed, regenerated, and transformed, Lord. It's in your son's mighty name we pray.